tracking rain and possible severe storms from what is left of Beryl. Now, the rain is in the Mid-South right now, but the Midwest is going to get some later on today, and we could see flooding potential with that as well.
Yes, I mean, you can see where Beryl is. It's actually not too far from Shreveport, and that's as a tropical depression. We're going to continue to watch the circulation, but the moisture spreads out, so we've really got to watch the two. It actually heads up into Canada. The cone stretches from Arkansas right up into parts of the Northeast here and, of course, into southern Canada. And this is a storm with a long history, and it is still in progress.
Yeah, thanks so much for getting your day going with us. We've got you covered here with the very latest on Beryl, also helping you plan for your week ahead, which, again, still has to deal with Beryl. Also, a lot of heat out there,
That's still on both coasts. We got heat advisories on both sides of the country.
July acting like July with tropical cyclones and heat, and it's all together in one big mess.
Yes.
Well, here's what we know right now as what's left of Beryl.
Let's look at where we are right now and where we're going to be tracking Beryl. So 30 miles per hour, at this point, it's starting to become extratropical. And so you start to see less of the rain right associated with the circulation and more of it getting spread out and actually getting involved with our front as well. It's located about 145 miles northeast of Tyler, Texas, moving to the northeast at 23. The next advisory is less than an hour away, so we'll get that soon. We're watching the rainfall as it evolved. It was tremendous with the rainfall rates that we had in Texas. You're ending up with anywhere from 10 to 13 or close to 14 inches of rain at its peak. Thankfully, some of that has lessened in terms of the rainfall rates now that it's away from the coast, but we still have some heavy rainfall. And of course, we had a number of tornado reports as well. Shreveport, the National Weather Service office there coming in with a record number of warnings that they had issued yesterday, 67 in one day, the most in a single day event. And it wasn't just actually a Shreveport record. It was a record for all places. So tremendous. I was watching the radar yesterday afternoon, and just it seemed like every single storm sort of embedded in the circulation had some rotation. Very stressful, I know, for all of you living there. And of course, for the Weather Service issuing those warnings yesterday. We also had some very strong winds that came with Beryl. Top wind gusts in Brazos, Texas, 97 miles per hour. Freeport also had a 97 mile per hour gust. And the airport, though, in Houston, where we had significant flight cancellations, 90% of the originating flights were canceled. 83 mile per hour winds came out of there as the circulation came on shore. Again, remember, Beryl was intensifying as it was making landfall. And those kind of storms always here sort of crank out some of the worst conditions, it feels like. Top rainfall, 13.55. That was about 3.5 miles to the west-southwest of Houston. Spring, Texas came in with more than 13. Texas City, more than 13. Katy, Texas, more than 11. And Surfside Beach, more than 9. And so you can see a lot of this heaviest of rain came on the track that was just along into the west of Houston is where we saw the biggest of the rainfall totals. But it was a very widespread area of 3 to 5, if not even 5 to 8 inches of rain. You can see just south of Shreveport, more than 7 inches. Even up in towards the Little Rock area, we saw some big rain up here with more than 6 inches in total. And now we're getting the rain on the move, continuing to lift up through Illinois, and now stretching into Indiana. And again, the circulation is down here in Arkansas, but you can see the moisture is now spread out. And of course, that's creating issues for travel today, Alex, with some of this heavy rainfall.
Absolutely. Now, the main
complicated. It's not a one-to-one kind of thing where, yes, it's the same kind of weather that we had when we saw Beryl making landfall in Texas. But there is some circulation, as Greg just talked about, and there are other reasons that we could see storms as well. So when you combine everything, well, we've got that risk. And for tomorrow, we've got an area to watch in northern Pennsylvania, southern New York. Places like Bradford and Binghamton, you've got the chance for thunderstorms. There is a chance we could see some severe weather. There is a 3 on the Torcon. Again, not the highest number, but a 3 means there could be a couple of tornadoes. So it's a day where you really need to be ready for warnings and know where you would take action and go to if you do indeed have warnings. 3 means isolated tornadoes possible. Tornado watches could be issued. Again, this is for tomorrow. Another big part of the story is that we have some pretty heavy rain potential as well. It's going to be a tropical feeling air mass. mess out there. It's going to be humid. We'll have the risk of some heavy rainfall and some bigger downpours coming in with some bigger rainfall rates. This is tomorrow, stretching into Thursday morning, all the way up into parts of New England, actually. So watch what happens. I'm going to pick it up where Greg left off with the moisture spreading up through Illinois and Indiana, maybe even lower Michigan. Then as we get to into your Wednesday, you see how that lifts up. A lot of it going up into southern Canada, but we'll have some chances for showers popping. Again, southern New York, maybe northern Pennsylvania. The moisture on the move, though, up into parts of Wisconsin, New Hampshire, even Maine. We're going to see that moisture continuing to move on in with some heavier rainfall amounts. The heaviest will be on the track initially that we're going to see just kind of pulling in that tropical moisture from Illinois into Indiana, into Michigan. But we've got the chance about 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, which is still a lot. We'll be watching for that up into northern parts of New York State, northern Vermont, stretching into New Hampshire as well. With other areas, it's going to feel soupy, and maybe we get 1 to 2 inches of rain. Circulation itself might actually go up into southern Canada, but we're going to see the moisture and some of the other features in the Northeast help to give us some risks of storms and possible severe weather. And so we take it tomorrow into Pennsylvania, into southern New York, where we got the chance of storms that may be severe wind, and a couple of tornadoes are the most likely threats. There's a 3 on the Torcon tomorrow, including in Bradford, Pennsylvania, really stretching all across the northern part of the Keystone State and up into New York, where we've got Binghamton in that 3 as well, with a 2 up towards Albany and Syracuse. And there's a 3 on the Torcon. It means isolated tornadoes are possible. Tornado watches could be issued. It's the kind of day where you need just to be ready. There may be some warnings. There may be some tornado warnings. So you need to know where you would go if indeed you are under a tornado warning. There will also be some heavy rainfall. Michigan, northern Pennsylvania, throughout much of New York State, into Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. We've got heavy rain potential with the possibility of flash flooding. It'll likely play out like this, with some of that heavy rain through the later hours today, lifting up into northern parts of Indiana, eventually into Michigan. And then we see even up here into northern Ohio, Cleveland, we could get some heavy rain out of this. But throughout your Wednesday, again, the bulk of it going up into southern Canada. We start to see the risk of some thunderstorms popping. Buffalo to Syracuse, we're talking about on I-90. We'll see some of that rainfall heaviest at times moving into New England as well, especially northern New England. You can see not a lot actually happens down here from Boston to New York City. Likely we'll see again the stretch of heaviest of rainfall and some of the risks of storms. You're lifting north into Canada with that chance extending down into New York State. All right, so let's talk more about the heavy rain and the big concerns with what's happening in the tropics. Greg.
Yeah, you know what?
Already the heat index rising, adding about 5 or 10 degrees to that for you. Now, we do have the risk of storms going severe, though, and this is for tomorrow. So we take what Greg was talking about and continue moving that. A lot of the heavy rain and the circulation will actually be in southeastern Canada, but we get into the zone where we could see severe weather chances in Bradford, Pennsylvania, watching around Clarion, Pennsylvania, Binghamton, New York. We also have surrounding areas here with at least a chance over towards Springfield and Mass, getting closer to Hartford, and even dropping down here into State College, Pennsylvania. The 3 on the Torcon is for Bradford over towards Binghamton, this zone in northern Pennsylvania into southern New York, a 2 surrounding it, and that does include the Capital District. And so, there's a couple things at play here. It's not just the sort of the remnant circulation from what was Beryl, but also there's an old front, there is a trough, there's the jet stream just to the north. So there are things at play that give us a 3 on the Torcon. Isolated tornadoes are possible on a day when there's a 3. It means that tornado watches may be issued. So be ready for that and then know where you would go if a warning is issued. That means the weather is imminent or occurring. Flooding is also a concern. Some of the heaviest rain will be in lower Michigan, but into the Northeast, there'll be pockets of heavy rainfall, especially in northern New York, northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That's where we'll get some of the tracks of the heaviest of rainfall moving. You see how it plays out. I mean, Greg talked about this rainfall that will be moving from Illinois, Indiana into Michigan. We watch that into the overnight hours. This is early tomorrow morning, a soak river commute for you if you're an early commuter there into the Detroit area over towards Grand Rapids. And then throughout the day tomorrow, we see some of that moisture move into northern New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and then the scattered showers develop later in the day. It's really not till overnight that we get just a few showers over to the I-95 corridor. Yeah, we just move what you're tracking into the Northeast, and there's a combination of things happening here. There's a front, there's a trough, there's a jet stream to the north, but we do see some risks of severe weather related to the fact that, the remnant circulation of Beryl will actually be tracking up in Canada, and that'll put us here in that area where we'll get some of that southerly flow. There'll be some shear here that will allow some storms to potentially go severe. There is that isolated chance of tornadoes with a 3 on the Torcon in southern New York, northern Pennsylvania, a 2 surrounding it, up to Syracuse and Albany and Springfield and Massachusetts. So isolated tornadoes are possible on a day when you have a 3 on the Torcon. Tornado watches may be issued, and that could lead to some tornado warnings. And that means that weather is occurring or imminent, and that's when you need to be in your safe place. So a day like tomorrow, it's just good to always revisit your plan, make sure you're ready to go in case there is severe weather that threatens. We have heavy rain potential, and that'll actually move into lower Michigan overnight tonight and then extend into parts of the Northeast as we get through tomorrow. It looks like this, with heavy rain moving up through Illinois and Indiana through today. By this evening, you've got the rain starting to move up into lower Michigan. Overnight, it's heavy. Maybe this is good sleeping weather. If it's not severe, I do like to hear that rain on the rooftop right when you're sleeping. But we see that risk of heavy rain extending, a lot of it extending into southern Canada, some of it down into northern New York State and then northern Vermont and New Hampshire. We've got showers out there that could be heavy at times, leading to the rainfall adding up, and that could lead to some flash flooding. And of course, that risk for some severe weather too. We don't get a lot on the East Coast, though. You can see from Philly to New York to Boston, it's not until overnight, Wednesday and Thursday, that we get a couple of showers. The bulk of the activity is all up to the north, and that's where the heaviest rain will be. By far, Illinois, Indiana, into Michigan, that's where we get the biggest rain. 3 to 5 inches of rain is in the forecast. All right, so let's get an update on the tropics, Greg. What else are we watching out there, if anything?
Well, we're watching